There comes a moment in life when silence becomes the heaviest burden, not because you've run out of words, but because the pain you carry has grown too vast to be spoken. It hides beneath the surface of your smile. Behind the "I'm okay," you whisper to yourself each morning. You look around and wonder, do they even know what they've done? Do they understand the weight of the wounds they left behind? Or have they moved on, untouched by the damage they caused? The heart, when betrayed, does not break cleanly. It shatters quietly, piece by piece in the dark, when no one is watching. And yet, in that sacred silence, there's another presence, an unseen listener who hears every unspoken grief, who counts every tear, who does not dismiss your pain as trivial or your sorrow as weakness. That listener is God. And though his justice is not always immediate, it is always certain. What if the pain you endured wasn't unnoticed by heaven? What if the cries you stifled in your pillow were not ignored, but collected, echoing in eternity, waiting to be answered by divine hands that do not forget? We often assume that God's justice is distant, reserved for final judgments, or some far-off reckoning. But the truth is, He is nearer than we know, working in silence, setting every crooked path straight, making sure that what was done in the dark will not remain hidden forever. God has a way of letting people walk into their own consequences. He doesn't always need to strike with thunder. Sometimes He simply lets them taste the bitter fruit of their own seeds. While you quietly try to heal, rebuild, and make peace with the ruins they left you in, God is writing a story behind the veil, one where the guilty are not exalted and the innocent are not forgotten. But in your waiting, the enemy whispers, "They're getting away with it." That lie is the most tormenting one. It convinces you that justice delayed is justice denied. And yet the pages of Scripture are filled with stories of silent sufferers whom God vindicated, not when they expected, but when it served His perfect plan. The God who sees in secret also repays in the open. He is not mocked. He is not blind. He is not indifferent. There is something sacred about being mistreated while staying pure, something powerful about holding your peace while your name is dragged through the mud. It's not weakness, it's trust. It's saying to the heavens, "I will not repay evil for evil. I will not become what they were to me. I will wait. I will heal. I will trust that God keeps records better than I ever could." Have you ever wondered why He allowed the betrayal in the first place? Why He didn't stop them? Why He didn't shield your heart from the pain they delivered without remorse? Perhaps it was to show you who they truly are, so you could finally let go. Perhaps it was to awaken something deeper in your spirit, a faith that refuses to be dictated by what your eyes see and your ears hear. And maybe, just maybe, it was to make room for something greater, divine justice that teaches them what you never could. The lessons they never learned from your kindness, your silence, or your forgiveness will come back around. Because God doesn't let injustice settle. It may look like they're thriving. It may look like they've escaped. But the truth, what they did will follow them. And eventually, it will catch up. So if your soul has been aching for justice, if your heart has been crying out not for revenge, but for restoration, take heart. You are not alone in this fight. You are not forgotten in your pain. God has heard, and He will act, not out of vengeance, but out of divine order. Now, how do you know that God is preparing to make them answer? How can you be certain that divine justice is already moving behind the scene? There are signs, subtle, sacred signs, that the heavens are not silent. They start losing the very things they took for granted, while hurting you. There is a spiritual law that governs the universe, one that no earthly power can overturn. What is sown must be reaped. It's not merely a principle, it's divine order. And when someone uses their blessings, their positions of comfort, or their access to you as weapons to wound you, they may enjoy a temporary illusion of success. But illusions never last. Sooner or later, the veil begins to fall. The first sign that God is making someone answer for what they did to you is this: they start losing the very things they never valued while they had them. The peace they mocked in you, they begin to crave. The love you poured so freely, they now find nowhere else. The loyalty you gave without condition, they search for it in others, only to be betrayed by the kind of people they used to be to you. It starts subtly. Maybe a job opportunity slips through their hands. Maybe the friends they relied on for validation begin to withdraw. Maybe their health falters, or their joy fades. They don't announce it, but the cracks begin to form. Life becomes heavy, burdensome. What once came easy now becomes a struggle. They may not connect it to how they treated you, but heaven does. Heaven always does. Because you see, God doesn't just defend the oppressed. He dismantles the structures that upheld the oppressor's false sense of power. And this dismantling is rarely loud. It's slow, quiet, strategic. God lets them walk into the desert they created for someone else. The same way they took you for granted. Your kindness, your presence, your forgiveness. God lets them feel what it means to be left with nothing that holds meaning. Sometimes the worst punishment is not fire and thunder, it's absence. It's when everything they once had begins to slip through their fingers like sand, and they can't grasp it no matter how hard they try. It's when they realize that they're not losing randomly, they're losing in the very places where they thought they were winning, while hurting you. And what makes this justice divine is not its cruelty, but its precision. God never acts out of blind wrath. He moves with mercy, but he also moves with truth. And the truth is, if they misused your love, they will feel the lack of it. If they trampled on your loyalty, they will encounter betrayal. If they disrespected your soul, they will be surrounded by people who cannot see. This is not your doing. This is not revenge. This is the holy correction of a God who will not allow wickedness to stand without response. And the most profound part, you don't have to watch them fall. You just have to watch God restore you. Because when their false blessings begin to crumble, it's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of accountability. And accountability, in the eyes of heaven, is sacred. You feel an unexplainable peace, while their life grows more unsettled. One of the most remarkable and undeniable signs that God is working on your behalf is this: a quiet, steady peace begins to fill you. Even though nothing around you has changed yet, the storm might still rage, the memory might still sting, the apology may have never come, but inside, something begins to shift. You stop replaying the betrayal. You stop needing closure from the person who broke you. You stop chasing answers that will never bring healing. Instead, you feel God's voice louder than ever. Be still and know that I am God. And this stillness is not passive. It's powerful. It's the kind of peace that confuses the enemy. It's the kind of peace that no explanation can satisfy, because it's not coming from your circumstances. It's coming from heaven. That's when you know justice has already started. Not outside of you,
but within. Because God's first act of justice is not vengeance, it is restoration, and He starts with your heart. He gently pulls out the poison others left in you. He breathes new life into your soul. He replaces your restlessness with His presence, and without warning, you start to feel free. And while that peace begins to clothe you like armor, something very different begins to settle on them: unrest. Life begins to lose its flavor. Moments that once thrilled them become hollow. Laughter becomes forced. Sleep becomes disturbed. Not because of anything you said or did, but because they are living outside of the harmony of truth. And the human soul can only pretend for so long. Eventually, what's broken inside starts leaking through the surface. This is what divine justice looks like in its earliest form: a reversal of inner states. You, who once walked in agony, now walk with grace. They who once moved through life with arrogance, now stumble in confusion. You are not bitter, but they are not at peace. And the contrast is not coincidence. It is spiritual. It is divine order in motion. The most beautiful part is that this peace you feel is not a reward, it's a preparation. God is healing your heart before He reveals their downfall. He is anchoring you in His love before He allows them to taste the discomfort of their choices. Because you are not meant to watch them suffer. You are meant to rise above the pain, and only peace can lift you high enough to do that. So when that quiet strength begins to enter your days, relish it. It's God's whisper that you're not alone. It's heaven's proof that restoration has begun. And as your soul steadies, their spirit trembles, because deep down they sense what they never thought would happen. You are no longer broken, and they are no longer untouched. People begin to see
their true colors without you saying a word. There's something sacred about holding your tongue while being torn apart by someone who never deserved your silence. The world says to speak up, to expose, to defend yourself, but God often asks us to take a different path. The narrow one, the quiet one, the one that trusts He will reveal what needs to be seen in His time. And when God begins to make someone answer for what they did to you, one of the earliest signs is this: people around them start to see who they truly are without your interference. The masks they wore so convincingly begin to crack. The charm they once used to deceive others loses its power. Their stories stop adding up. Their energy starts repelling instead of attracting.
You never have to scream the truth when God is your defender. You never have to expose anyone when heaven has taken up your cause, because there is a mysterious and divine unraveling that happens when someone has built their life on lies. Slowly, steadily, their image begins to crumble, not because you plotted their downfall, but because truth has a way of rising on its own. God does not need your voice to speak.
One He's already judging in silence. It may start with small things. Someone who used to believe them begins to question. A friend who once took their side starts to distance themselves. A community that applauded them begins to whisper with suspicion. You didn't ask for this. You didn't even try to sway opinion. But the light of truth has a power that no manipulation can withstand. And this sign, though quiet, is deeply spiritual. It means God is lifting the veil. It means He is protecting your integrity while revealing the deception of those who harmed you. It is His way of proving that your silence was not weakness. It was wisdom, because when people begin to connect the dots on their own, the truth becomes undeniable, not emotional, not biased, just undeniable. You may feel conflicted when this happens. Part of you will feel vindicated, while another part will ache at the thought of anyone being exposed. That's normal. That's the mark of someone whose heart is still tender, even after betrayal. But don't confuse your softness for foolishness. God is showing you that when you remain in character, He will handle the consequences. And for the ones who once believed the lies about you, some will come back with apologies. Some will stay silent but change their posture. Others will simply disappear. That's not your burden to carry. That's God rebalancing the scales. You no longer have to worry about your reputation. The one who formed you will defend what's true about you. So when people begin to whisper, not about you, but about them, when eyes start to open, when alliances begin to shift, and the story starts to sound different to those who once judged you, don't interfere, just observe. Because that's not gossip, that's God. Opportunities shut for them, while doors open for you. When someone wrongs you deeply and walks away without remorse, they often assume the skies will remain clear over their life. They may even believe they've won, but what they don't see is the spiritual realm shifting in real time. Because when they mistreated you, they didn't just betray a person, they dishonored a divine connection. And God does not overlook dishonor. One of the clearest and most divine signs that God is holding someone accountable for what they did to you is this: opportunities that once came easily to them begin to vanish, while unexpected doors begin to open for you. It's a holy reversal, a divine rerouting, and it doesn't happen by chance. It happens by God's hand. You'll notice it first in the little things. Projects they were confident in suddenly fall apart. Relationships they relied on for success begin to weaken. Plans they made with certainty collapse without warning. It doesn't look like punishment at first. It looks like confusion, bad timing, misfortune. But beneath it all is something deeper. The removal of favor. When you harm someone who walks closely with God, when you trample on the heart of someone who prays even through their tears, you invite spiritual consequences, and those consequences often take the form of lost access, because God knows how to pull away the very things that once made the arrogant feel invincible. Meanwhile, something radically different begins to happen in your life. The same doors that were once closed to you, doors of healing, restoration, success, begin to swing open. People you never expected to support you show up. Paths you didn't think you qualified for become clear. The same voice that was once dismissed starts to carry weight. That's not luck. That's God honoring you for enduring with grace. And the contrast becomes stark. Their confusion becomes your clarity. Their loss becomes your gain. Not because you took anything from them, but because God is redistributing what is rightfully. He is shifting the harvest from the one who sowed in deceit to the one who endured with righteousness. There is something unshakably powerful about watching heaven open for you while it begins to close for those who tried to block your light. It's not revenge, it's balance. Divine order stepping into a story that once felt unfair. And God is not just blessing you to make a point. He's doing it because your heart was proven. You didn't repay evil for evil. You didn't stoop. You waited. And now the reward is coming. Not just in peace but in promise. When this happens, hold your head high. But keep your heart humble. You are not better than them. You were just faithful when it hurt. And now God is showing both you and them what He does with faithfulness. He opens the heavens for it. They keep repeating the same mistakes, and nothing satisfies them when someone walks through life without remorse for the pain they've inflicted. They unknowingly enter a cycle, a spiritual spiral that God allows not as punishment, but as a mirror. They may believe they've escaped accountability, that what they did to you is buried and forgotten. But the truth is, heaven keeps perfect records.
And the moment you were mistreated by someone who refused to take ownership of their actions, they stepped into a divine loop, a loop where lessons not learned become consequences repeatedly lived. One of the most revealing signs that God is making them answer for what they did is this: they keep repeating the same mistakes, again and again, and yet nothing they chase brings satisfaction. Their relationships fall apart, their efforts fail, their goals elude them. It's as if they're always reaching, but never receiving, always pursuing, but never arriving. And it's not coincidence, it's spiritual justice in motion. This is what happens when a heart refuses to confront the truth. Instead of reflecting, they deflect. Instead of repenting, they blame. Instead of looking inward, they point outward. And because they refuse to heal, they carry the same wounds into every new chapter of their life. But here's the thing about unresolved sin and unchecked pride: it follows you. It doesn't stay behind. It infects the new. It ruins what was meant to be redemptive. It clouds every blessing, until nothing feels like a blessing at all. And slowly their world begins to shrink, not in size but in joy. Nothing fills them, nothing satisfies them. They can gain applause but feel empty. They can achieve goals but feel anxious. They can surround themselves with people and still feel painfully alone, because the soul knows when something is wrong, and no amount of external success can quiet the internal storm that disobedience stirs. God, in His wisdom, allows this cycle to continue, not to destroy them, but to awaken them. He gives them opportunity after opportunity to break the pattern. But when pride silences conviction, the pattern becomes prison, and eventually, their life becomes a reflection of the pain they once caused others. What's remarkable is that from the outside they might still look successful. They may still be admired. They may still pretend everything is fine. But inside, there's a storm they can't explain, a weight they can't lift, a hunger that no achievement can satisfy. That's not depression. That's the soul crying out for truth. That's the evidence that peace can't grow where dishonesty reigns. It's spiritual thirst, the kind that no earthly water can quench. Meanwhile, you start to see it clearly. You don't rejoice in it, but you recognize it. The very behavior they used to justify their actions against you now becomes their stumbling block. The manipulation that once seemed so effective now isolates them. The lies they told about you become burdens they can't outrun. The games they played now play them over and over again. And here's the holy mystery in it all: they don't realize they're the common denominator. They think life is unfair, that people keep turning on them, that opportunities are just harder to come by. But the truth is, until they make things right, not just with you but with God, they will never know peace. They will continue to spin in circles, building houses on broken foundations, wondering why everything keeps collapsing. That's how God works. He doesn't always respond with fire and wrath. Sometimes, He simply lets someone live with the consequences of their own choices, until the echo of their wrongdoing grows so loud that it drowns out their pride, until the repetition becomes a sermon, until the emptiness becomes unbearable. And while they're stuck in this cycle, God is lifting you out of yours. The cycle of pain, the cycle of confusion, the cycle of wondering why they treated you the way they did. He's breaking your patterns while letting theirs continue, because you chose humility and they chose denial. So if you see someone repeating their own destruction, don't try to rescue them. Don't interrupt what God is doing. Sometimes, the deepest healing comes only after someone walks through the wilderness they created for others. Let them walk it. Let them feel what they made you feel. Not because you wish them harm, but because it's the only way they'll ever truly understand the harm they caused. And maybe, just maybe, That's how their redemption begins, not with applause, not with reward, but with the holy breaking of a prideful heart.
You stop feeling bitter, and they start feeling guilty. There is a moment in every healing journey that feels almost unreal. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps in during a quiet moment, maybe during a walk, maybe during a prayer, maybe during a moment of reflection. And suddenly you realize you don't feel bitter anymore. You're not carrying the weight of what they did to you like you used to. You're not rehearsing old conversations. You're not waiting for them to say sorry. You're not hoping they feel the pain you felt. You've let go. And in that letting go, something incredible happens. You finally taste peace, and they begin to taste guilt. This is not karma. This is God's divine timing. Because when someone has deeply hurt you and never made it right, they often believe their silence has protected them from consequences. But silence is not innocence, and forgetting is not forgiveness. What they don't understand is that the longer they go without accountability, the heavier the truth becomes on their soul. And when your spirit finally releases them, God places the weight of conviction right into their hands. You see, for as long as you carried bitterness, you were the one entangled. Your healing was delayed. Your heart was clouded. But the moment you surrendered that bitterness, not out of weakness, but out of strength, that's when your hands became free to receive God's restoration. That's when your heart became light enough to rise again. That's when heaven began to exchange your wounds for wisdom. But for them, that's when the real unraveling begins. Because guilt doesn't always strike immediately. Sometimes it sleeps. It stays buried under denial, covered by pride, drowned out by distraction. But guilt has a way of finding people when they least expect it. And when it finally awakens, it doesn't come in whispers. It comes like a flood. And the very memories they buried begin to resurrect themselves. The things they did, the things they said, the way they twisted the truth, the way they walked away as if you meant nothing. All of it comes back, not by your doing, but by God's perfect design. And suddenly they can't laugh like they used to. They can't enjoy the company they once surrounded themselves with. They can't look in the mirror without hearing the echo of their own silence. When you were crying out for truth, for love, for dignity, God knows how to stir the waters of guilt in someone's soul until they are forced to confront the image they see in the reflection of your strength. Because nothing triggers guilt like watching someone you broke rise without you. They thought your healing would make them comfortable. Instead, it makes them restless. They thought you forgiving them meant they got away with it. Instead, it reveals how small they truly were in the face of your grace. And while guilt begins to take root in their spirit, you continue to grow in freedom. You begin to enjoy your own company again. You laugh without sorrow sitting beside it. You pray without pleading for justice. You love without fear of being betrayed again. And the most beautiful part, you no longer crave their guilt. You don't need it to validate your healing. Because you've learned something sacred. Peace doesn't come from them hurting. It comes from you no longer needing to watch them hurt. But God is still just. He sees what was done, and He knows how to let guilt do what no lecture ever could. He knows how to bring them to a place where the silence they once used to avoid accountability becomes the silence in which they hear everything clearly. Their conscience speaks louder now. Their memories are sharper now. And you
You're no longer in the courtroom of their decisions. You've been moved to a higher place. This is spiritual transformation in its rawest form. You releasing bitterness is not you letting them off the hook. It's you getting off the hook they hung you on. It's you stepping out of the prison of resentment and walking into the freedom of grace. It's you choosing not to carry what they should be carrying, because guilt belongs to them now. That's the justice of heaven. It's not always loud. Sometimes it comes in the stillness of your peace and the chaos of their conscience. They might not tell you they're feeling it. They might not show it in public, but it shows in how unsettled they become, in the way their smile no longer reaches their eyes, in the way their confidence begins to falter, and deep inside they know you deserved better. You were pure and they were wrong. And here's the holy irony. Your freedom becomes their mirror. Every time they see you healed, whole and no longer waiting for their apology, they are forced to reckon with what they've done. And that is more powerful than any revenge. That is more lasting than any confrontation. Because the guilt they now carry was forged not by your bitterness, but by your release. And that is the justice of God. You are no longer tormented by what they did, but they are now haunted by what they refuse to admit. They become haunted by regret, while you rise in grace. There is a truth that time reveals in ways words never could. Regret is one of the most painful prisons a soul can inhabit. And when God begins to make someone answer for the hurt they caused, one of the most piercing and unmistakable signs is this: they become haunted by the very moments they once dismissed, while you rise in grace and dignity, untouched by the chains that once bound you. At first they seemed fiend. While you wept in silence they laughed. While you questioned your worth, they flaunted their indifference. They moved on, created distractions, wrapped themselves in pride, and tried to bury the truth beneath noise. But truth doesn't decay. It waits, and when God decides the season of divine response has come, regret begins to rise from the ashes of everything they thought they buried. It doesn't show up in thunder. It's not loud. It's quiet, intimate, personal. It creeps in during moments when they're alone, when the crowds disappear, when the music fades, when the mask slips just enough for them to feel again. That's when it hits them. The reality of what they did, the cost of their decisions, the weight of your absence. They remember the way you gave your heart without hesitation, the way you forgave them when they didn't deserve it, the way you loved them even while being broken by them. And the realization becomes a blade, not because you're still hurting, but because they finally are. Not because you begged for justice, but because heaven answered in a way more precise than anything you could have orchestrated. They thought they were escaping the consequences. They thought time would dull the truth, but instead time sharpened it. Because the further they get from the moment they betrayed you, the clearer it becomes just how much they lost. They begin to see that it wasn't just a person they hurt. It was a gift, a covering, a divine connection. And the worst part for them, they can't undo it. There is no rewind. There is no reset. There is no way back to the version of you that would have still welcomed them, still believed in them, still offered grace at the door. That version of you no longer exists. You've grown, you've healed, you've risen, and that is what haunts them the most. Regret becomes their shadow. It follows them into new relationships, into successes that feel hollow, into nights that should have been peaceful but aren't. They lie awake, replaying what they said, how they acted, what they failed to protect. Not because someone reminds them, but because God does. And God doesn't remind to humiliate. He reminds to humble, to convict, to correct. But while they are haunted, you are rising, not just surviving, not just moving on, rising. There's a difference. You're not dragging the past behind you like a wounded soul. You're walking in light. You're walking in grace. You are walking in a freedom that doesn't need to explain itself anymore. And people can see it. They see the glow in your eyes that pain tried to steal. They hear the strength in your voice that silence once muted. They notice the joy that shouldn't have survived the betrayal, but did, because you were never rising alone. God was lifting you the entire time. This is divine justice, at its most poetic. The very person they tried to reduce now stands restored, renewed, elevated, not in revenge, but in reverence, not in pride, but in power. A kind of power that comes only from going through the fire and coming out with faith still intact. And what happens next is even more powerful. Your grace becomes their grief. The way you carry yourself becomes the sermon they can't unhear. Every time they see you thriving, it reminds them of what they threw away. Every step you take forward is a step they wish they could follow but can't. Because regret is not just sorrow, it's realization. It's the ache of knowing you had something pure and didn't protect it. God doesn't need you to punish them. He doesn't want your hands dirty with revenge. He wants your hands lifted in worship, because your healing is the justice. Your grace is the evidence. Your peace is the proof. While they're haunted by a truth they tried to escape, you are held by a God who never left your side. This is how God balances the scales. This is how heaven writes a story the world can't deny. Not by crushing your enemies, but by letting them sit in the silent personal reckoning of their own decisions, while elevating you far beyond what their cruelty ever thought you'd reach. So now, while they live with the weight of everything they didn't fix, you live with the lightness of everything God rebuilt in you. They are haunted, not by your pain but by your peace. And that, my friend, is the kind of justice no one can deny. Now you know, heaven is not silent. God is not still. The pain you endured was not meaningless, and the injustice you suffered did not go unnoticed. Every tear you cried was counted. Every silent prayer was heard. Every injustice that was swept under the rug by others was recorded by the hand of a just and holy God. The signs have been there all along, in the way their life slowly unravels while yours is rebuilt, in the way peace starts to embrace you while unrest begins to chase them, in the reversal of silence. Your silence that once held pain now holds power, while their silence becomes the weight of guilt they can no longer outrun. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't demand punishment. You trusted God, and that trust has been your greatest weapon. Because when you stepped back, heaven stepped in, and when you stopped speaking, heaven started echoing your name through divine justice, through vindication that doesn't destroy, but reveals, corrects, and restores. Some of you watching this have spent months, maybe even years, trying to understand why they got away with it, why no one stood up for you, why it seemed like darkness won. But I want you to hear this clearly. No one gets away with anything in the eyes of God. The process may be hidden, the timing may be delayed, but the outcome is always certain. You're not being overlooked, you're being lifted. You're not being forgotten, you're being favored, and what was meant to destroy you is being used to define you, not by your pain but by your endurance.
your faith in your rise. Let those who walked away from their responsibilities be haunted by their refusal to change. Let those who harmed you sit with their silence.
You have a different calling. You are not called to carry bitterness. You are